there's not even an AI company to trade. We're trading. So I don't know how it's a bubble. I mean, yeah, you can trade Microsoft, but it comes with a bunch of other stuff. NVIDIA, okay, it's a chip maker. Yes, it's creating AI software and other stuff. That's the closest we've got. So it's not like there's a bunch of, it's not like 2000 where every tech company goes up. We just don't have that. So I'm not sure how investable it really is outside of the semiconductors, which I've been long of for a year for Pro Macro, and also in the exponentialist. And they've done incredibly well. And they continue to go well because there was a panic to buy compute. Mm. But what was really interesting is Elon Musk was talking earlier in the week about, okay, there's a panic to buy compute now. Most people have put in the sort of orders they need to put in. So going forwards, NVIDIA's growth may slow, whether it's next year or the year after, and it will inevitably slow, right? This is like a pandemic panic into purchasing stuff. But he's like, well, the next thing is you need transformers to step power down from power plants to chips. And it's like, we don't have enough in the world. He was speaking at Bosch, the German electronics company, and said, you guys need to make more of this stuff. We're about to run out of the ability to generate enough power to generate all of this stuff. And then he's saying, and then we've got a problem with electricity. We're just not ready for the amount of power we need for this compute. So this story is going to keep unfolding, and we really have only just started.
Yeah. One of the interesting things Beth said was in this cycle, I thought this was such an interesting comment that a lot of what's happening, we'll see if it continues, is happening in publicly traded companies. Whereas previously, now not to say there's not a boatload of money being invested in the private market chasing this, but there is a lot of activity in the public market as these companies move into that business. That wasn't always the case in other cycles. So I thought that was so interesting.
So think what's happening here. I'm not sure that VC in AI is even going to generate any returns. And the reason being is by the time you raise the capital, launch your product, OpenAI has destroyed it. I actually personally believe that OpenAI is building AI using AGI or something close to AGI. So there's no way 500 people can generate this much disruption across this many business lines in this speed, right? So I think they're doing a different process than anybody else. So every time there's a bunch of new startups come along, OpenAI just basically destroys them. Mm. So I think it's very, very, very difficult to generate value in this space unless you have all the compute. So there's a few companies, the French one, Mistral. I'm not even sure how Emad's Stability AI will do. And I think it's really, really hard to compete in this.
It's really hard to compete. You need deep pockets. You need that power. Eventually, as you mentioned, you're going to need the energy. It's different than what we've seen before.
Jamie, because the applications layer, don't forget, by the time GPT-5 comes out, they'll have, Sam Altman was talking about this, they'll have multi-agents, which means that you can ask it to build a website that does X, blah, 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 and it'll just do it all. So how do you build businesses on the applications layer when the AI itself can create the applications layer in 10 minutes? Mm. And then you get into the problem in the future is, let's say somebody develops something amazing and it's really cool and it's getting traction. So you go to the AGI and say, I want to replicate this product, but with stronger behavioral incentives, and I want to skew it towards the larger audience of India. Go. It'll build it in 10 minutes. So then how do you build companies? And I talked about this in my piece, is like beyond 2030, this becomes a very, very, very complicated world because a lot of what we understand to be true will not be true any longer.
Yeah, which is a daunting thing to think about. And this is also why we kind of kicked off the series close to the top of the geopolitical conversation with D. Smith and Jacob, because you're talking about how to build businesses. How do you create a business in that environment? We got to figure out how we operate as societies in that environment. And it's going to be messy as we make that transition. Jamie, I want to bring you in though. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening in crypto. So of course, that is the other big sort of opportunity set people are talking about. And we now have a situation where we have this Bitcoin ETF. So theoretically, it is a little bit more accessible to people. Some of the barrier perhaps has been taken down. We know that there's been headlines around how successful, how quickly it's grown, the most successful ETF launch ever. If you just look at the speed in which it generated inflows. How are you thinking about the crypto market in the wake of that? What are you seeing and what are you hearing?
Yeah, well, I mean, the success of the ETF products, I think it's taken most people by surprise. We're seeing just in the last week or the last couple of days, we're seeing some outflows. So we're starting to see that first pullback really from what we saw from the outset. But really, we are still very, very early in this game. There are a lot of platforms that have not yet signed up or opened up to the ETFs. So I think this will be, a drip feed into the market over, many, many years. But Bitcoin is still going to be subject and crypto is still going to be subject to the same cycles that we've seen before. So the real big question now in regards to the ETFs is, what about Ethereum? And so obviously we've got an SEC that is still outwardly against the idea of an Ethereum ETF, which is just bananas when you think about it. Like, they've approved an Ethereum futures ETF. So if that's the case, then what they've done is effectively illegal by approving that product in the first place. You've got all of the emails that came out from the previous chairman, which clearly stated that amongst all the SEC officials at that time, they didn't believe that Ethereum was a security. So it's confusing to the market. And I think this is really just the last gasping breaths of a system or a institution that is beholden to certain interests that are not aligned with the future, not aligned with the productivity and the innovation that's required to dig the country and to dig every nation state out of the hole that's been created over the last multi-decade period. And so I think we're starting to see, one of the best indicators for the change in sentiment that we're seeing globally is really what's happening just in the US presidential election cycle this time around. Like in 2020, Raoul, do you remember anyone suggesting, without being laughed out of the room, that it would become a presidential issue or a policy platform of any of the presidential candidates? It was not even remotely on the radar. Now you've got candidates from all sides of politics actually promoting the concepts of, monetary sovereignty and the need for, a digital hard asset and neutral currency like Bitcoin, but it's extending to also the cryptocurrency space as well. So I just think it's, what we're seeing is just the last gasps of,
one of my views on this, Jamie, is that everybody knows how messy the system is. I think the central bankers are not stupid. Everybody knows, and they know what they're doing. They're debasing currency to try to not let the system blow up, because all of the savings are with the retirees, and it's a big mess. So their one job is to not allow the migration into crypto land to happen too fast. I don't think they're going to stop it. I don't think they even probably want to stop it. I don't think the banks want to stop it. I don't think anybody wants to stop it. But I think their real job is to slow it down. What they don't want is Bitcoin as deemed to be a currency, a world currency. As an asset, as a store of value, knock your socks off. As an investment, no problem. You want to build on top of it, technology, no problem. Just don't think of it as a world currency, because that threatens the overall system. But that's I just think of them as throttling it. So even, I think all of us are laughing at the SEC trying to now call Ether security. I think it's just a delay tactic as ever. Just slow it down.
It could very well be, but I also think about it this way. It's the dynamics of a messy democratic system where you've got vested interests, and I think some vested interests do want to stop it. But what it ends up being is this they're just basically putting the brakes on it, slowing it down, as you said, because there's now multiple factions involved, and that creates the market for the prices, but also creates the market for the memes and everything else that comes to regulation. So, it feels frustrating.
One thing that makes me laugh, Jamie, is the more that they try and constrict it or slow it down, whatever, right? The more the space gets ridiculous, the more the memes come, the more the middle finger comes up, the more the space reacts to that kind of pressure. It makes me laugh how much people don't care about what the old system says anymore.
Yeah, I don't think they fully understand what they're messing with.